I am honored to be in the presence of Dr. Karl Soler. Thank you for your time. And I will be interviewing him about some pertinent questions that haven't been asked about COVID-19. And I also want to learn more, and so the public also learns more. I will be asking some questions and he will be replying in his expert opinion.
Well, just to explain, as an expert, I'm a medical doctor and I'm a specialist in occupational medicine and family medicine. However, part of my studies, I've actually done a number of research degrees, and I've actually been involved in a number of research projects. So one of the skills I've learned, and I also teach, is the appraisal, the collection, some appraisal and summarizing of research evidence. So what I hope possibly contribute is looking at what evidence is available to inform us about this new epidemic.
So the first question is, are all the confirmed positive cases that is being used by the RT-PCR test actually infectious, or could there be particles of COVID-19 which are detected by this test but not actually infectious? What cycle is the RT-PCR test being used in Malta, being amplified to, and what difference does it make that a high cycle is being used?
Okay, let's explain. COVID-19 is basically a virus, and it causes respiratory symptoms. In some people it doesn't cause any symptoms, in other people it causes mild symptoms, and in other people it can lead to severe disease, and even leading to death. Many times death has come from either an augmented immune response, or else thrombosis, or else consumption also of certain platelets or certain other elements of the blood, and basically overwhelming of multiple organ systems, so that the person actually dies because of the viral infection and the immune reaction to that viral infection, which causes certain problems. So the virus is actually a sugar coating around a small amount of genetic material, and the PCR test, or polymerase chain reaction, is basically a process whereby you take the genetic material inside the virus, but not all of it, part of it, and you amplify it a number of times. So each cycle you increase the amount of the original RNA, which is ribonucleic acid, which is a type of genetic material which is used inside cells to code for proteins. And this is how the virus replicates. It takes the PCR test, you take a sample, you try to see if there is any RNA of viral RNA in that sample, and you do it with these multiplication cycles. The more you multiply, the more the original amount of RNA in your sample is multiplied. But there are a number of good things and bad things. On the one hand, you can, even with 1 or 2 molecules of this viral RNA, you can multiply it enough that you actually eventually detect it and you get a positive result. But what that means is that you have 1 or 2, or maybe more, RNA molecules in your sample. Now, this can happen either because you are infected, you have an infection with COVID-19, and you basically have COVID-19, you basically are, the virus is replicating inside your body and you are producing virus. So you are actually making new viral particles that can be infectious. It can also happen if you are immune, you've been exposed to the virus, you are not infected, you are fighting the virus, but there are some viral particles live, or because viruses are not really alive, active or viable viral particles in your nose, but you're not infected, but you could possibly be infectious. It could also happen that you're immune, you've killed the virus, and you have viral particles in your nose which are completely fragments of the virus. Now, when studies have been done comparing with a positive PCR, how many cycles have been performed, and whether you actually have live virus, there is actually a study which I have shared. Possibly we may actually have a reference for that in the footnotes below the video, where basically you at 24 cycles, after a few days that a person has symptoms, with a positive PCR test, you have between 20 and 80% of people who are positive where you actually grow the virus, which means that between 20 and 80% are not infected. So you have a positive PCR test at 24 cycles, And yet, even though it's positive, because it was done too late after symptoms emerged, or because it was done in someone who was possibly already immune, you actually have a positive result and you can't grow virus if you try to grow virus from the sample. So the interpretation of the PCR requires some care. You cannot say positive PCR means that you are infected. Positive PCR means that you may be immune and have been exposed to the virus. You may have been infected weeks before and you've killed off the virus, but there are some remnants. Or you may actually be infected or be immune and fighting the virus. If you have only a few viral particles, less than 100, even if you are not immune, you will not get the disease. You will basically get the natural defenses will actually stop the virus infecting. So you need to have more than 100 viral particles to get the infection. In Malta, we seem to be doing about 38 cycles. So the recommended is 24-25. The more you go beyond 24-25, the more false positives you will have. In other words, the test will be positive, and yet you will not be either infected or infectious because there are too few viral particles or fragments of the viral RNA.
Thank you.